Hello, fellow cinephiles, and welcome to the very first episode of Talk Film to Me podcast, a podcast where we talk about films in Kenya and beyond. I am your host, Nkatha. Let's talk film. So today we are going to be talking about a film, a documentary, rather a feature documentary. It's called Between the Rains, and it's a very beautiful, beautiful film. So Between the Rains talks about the Turkana pastoral community and how they grapple with the challenges, or rather the effects of climate change. This is from cattle raiding to livestock dying to no grazing land and no access to water. In the midst of all this struggle, the film also casts a spotlight on Kole, who we see him trying to find his place in the community and transitioning from childhood to adulthood. So it's a very, very emotional story in some way, but very educative, because it's a film about, rather it's a documentary about climate change, and you know how hard it is to make films about such things. So it's a very beautifully told film, and also how climate change can affect an individual, which I think is very brilliant. It's a very brilliant idea, because if I asked you right now, how does climate change affect you? We live in the city, you might not know. I mean, if it rains, fine, you'll just complain, it's raining today, I can go out. Or if it doesn't rain for the next 3 weeks, you will want to go swimming every day. So, but these people we're literally immersed into their lives, into the lives of this community, and we get to see how climate change affects them and their way of life. Now, this film was directed by Andrew Harrison Brown. It was released on the 1st of June in 2023. Forgive me, guys, I sort of have a cold. And it was shot for 4 years, basically 5 years, because Andrew said that he spent the first year, or rather the production team spent the first year talking to the community and getting to know them, because we know how closed off the Turkana community is. So imagine a foreigner, not just a foreigner, but a foreigner coming with cameras and being around you 24/7 shooting, because they had over 100 hours of footage, guys. That's a lot of footage. So they spend a lot of time with them. So it was great getting to know these people, introducing yourself. So by the time that you're shooting and you're with them, you at least know about each other, you know about each other's cultures, or rather you as the production team knew about the culture of these people. So it was easy to blend and be able to get to be able to get very authentic content, very authentic shots, a very authentic film, in short. That's what I'm trying to say. So here's my expectations and preconceptions. Hey, English. My expectations and preconceptions before watching the film. In the opening scene, rather when I saw the trailer of this film, I thought, this is going to be another film which talks about, or rather a typical, forgive me guys, I'm using rather a lot, that's like 5 times. Who was counting with me? Why are you counting? Listen to what I have to say, stop counting. So when I first saw the trailer, I thought, this is going to be another typical African film, which talks about the people and them having a god. Because in this film, there is a constant reference to the spirit of nature. And these people have a god called Akuj. And he's the spirit of nature. He's the good and the bad. He's the drought and the rain. So I thought, okay, that's what the film is going to be about. But how it was told, we're able to see the perspective of the community and the communities around them, and also of the main character, who is called Kole. So let's get into the film, rather how it runs through. So the opening scene, very interesting, starts with the voice of an elderly man talking about how the Turkana people existed and they lived in harmony with nature, and they would move and follow the rains and not stay in one place long enough to burden the land. So that was very makes me think. I still wonder, because in the film we don't get to know whose voice this was. I wonder who that was. But anyway, moving on swiftly. The other scene which follows after that is Kole. Kole, the young boy, and he was taking care of livestock outside and then goes inside and he calls his grandmother, "Grandmother, wake up, you need to eat, you need to be strong, you look weak, eat." And the grandmother tells him, "I'm feeling pain here, but no, you should not be taking care of me. You should be outside herding the livestock." And that really struck me, because this lady prefers this boy outside watching the livestock than taking care of her. So that can tell you how deeply entrenched the culture of these people is. It's very deep within them. It also tells you how important taking care of livestock is in this community. So after that, of course, we're not showing whether Kole feeds him, but Kole feeds the grandmother, and then we move on and we're introduced to Patrick. Patrick is Kole's brother, and Patrick has a son who is now Kole's nephew, obviously. So Patrick is portrayed as a very strong man, and not just in terms of physical strength. I'm talking about character. Very strong. Well, Kole, his sensitive side stands up to show a lot, which is very peculiar, or rather, it's not a norm for such a community. The Turkana community believe that a man should be a warrior, and how sensitive Kole was in showing things was a bit contrary to the traditions and expectations from this community. So it's a very challenging journey for him, moving from childhood all the way to adulthood. Then I will now talk about things that I felt during this film. So number one, I felt sad every time Kole would feel, because Kole talks about, I think in the beginning, he talks about how he'd want a different journey, because in this community, you have to be a warrior as a man. Because of the changes in climate, or rather, because nature is angry with them. Get this? Like I say, there's a constant reference to nature. So, since nature has changed, it's not raining. I remember it had not rained for 2 years. Everybody has to man up. Everybody has a responsibility in the community, because there's a scene where there's a lady who builds a cattle shed for her for the livestock of her family. And so the men are expected to take care of the livestock and feed the family. And if there's a reduction in the livestock, probably go raid the other community and bring something back home. And that really stood out for me. And it made me think, if this is happening in this community, it must also be very similar in the other community, because they would raid each other in turns. You raid us, okay, we are going to revenge, we're raiding you. That's what it came about. And this film humanizes what we see in the news, because we see in the headlines, 3 men were killed, 40 men were killed in a cattle raid, and you're like, why are these people fighting? And you have to understand. If you watch this film, you will understand these people, because I remember a scene where the police came and they were arresting some cattle raiders, and these cattle raiders were begging for mercy. Oh my, I felt so bad. I felt like I could tell the cops, no, you don't understand these people, don't arrest them. But the law is the law, right? Sad. But anyway, if you watch this film, you'll understand. These people understand that if we do not raid the other community and get livestock, we are going to die of hunger. The drought is going to finish us. So it's like a means of survival for these people. So we are out here thinking this was just fighting. But the effects of climate change, it hasn't rained. There's no food. There's no water. There's no grazing land, there's no pasture. They have to steal from each other, because the more livestock you have, you can keep feeding on the meat until it rains. That's what they hope for. And I think it's really beautifully told, and they're very intimate shots and scenes where you're able to immerse yourself in that situation and get to see the why. Because I think that's what we don't understand, the why. Why are these people doing this? What do you mean climate change affects them? Because do you think climate change affects you? So it was very interestingly told. And there was a scene where Kole now has to transition from childhood to manhood. And this is after a series of having we saw like 3 or 4 conversations he had with his brother, which he kept on being pushed. He was being constantly pushed and being told that you have to man up. Your test is coming. You have to stand up. You have to take responsibility. You have to be a warrior. And one day he tells his brother, okay, fine, I'll do it. And everyone is shocked. What do you mean? Are you sure he's ready? And the brother says, he said he was ready. Guess what the ritual is? They knock out your tooth. Have you ever had a toothache? That pain can kill you. Even the strongest man, you can see a man crying. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a man crying. Please do not cancel me. But toothaches are very painful. So imagine somebody knocking off your perfectly matured. Remember, these are not milk teeth. It's the ones that come after. Knocking them off. Hey, it was such a painful scene to watch, by the way, because I was imagining that pain, and it was a bit bloody, and Kole cried. And that didn't stand out well for him, stand well with the members of the community, rather the elders, because it was men who were there. And they told him, Kole, you're a coward. Because why are you crying? And he was supposed to have 2 removed. His brother had 2 removed. So that can tell you what that shows or what that represents. That Patrick is a very strong man. He's a man. He's a warrior. And Kole needs to be the same. But Kole only got 1 tooth knocked out and he cried. He didn't weep. There were tears. And they were telling him, you're a man. Stop showing tears. So that was a really sad scene, and it continued to show us how sensitive Kole was in such a community. And it was I felt so bad for him. I felt so bad for him. And after that, he was a bit ostracized. He kept hanging out alone, and you could see how lonely he was. And I could only imagine how bad he felt that, maybe I'm not a man enough, I'm not strong enough because I wasn't able to do what my brother did. Because everybody in the community was praising Patrick. Everyone. And it wasn't the same for Kole, sadly. And also, let's talk, something. The cinematography in this documentary, crisp. They had amazing shots. They knew, the DOP, Harrison knew exactly what he wanted. He had good shots. There's a shot where, so these people have rituals where they sacrifice either a goat or sheep, and then, bloody scenes. These people drink blood and have a taste of raw meat. It was giving cannibal, I swear. It was giving cannibal. I was like, what? But it's not that it's very new to us. It's just watching it and seeing how, like, for them it's normal, And for me, I'm like, what do you mean you're drinking blood? Not water, not milk, not juice. Milk that cow. Drink the milk. Why are you drinking blood? But it's their culture. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. So after drinking the blood, they would remove the intestines. And they had a shaman who would use his fingers to read the intestines and tell them what the gods were saying. So I remember in this one scene, in such a ritual, where there was sort of like a whirlwind, like I don't know whether to call it a hurricane. It was like a sandstorm. And he said that the gods were angry, and it was such an immediate reaction from nature, according to the film, or rather according to these people. It was a brilliant shot. You should watch it. Like if you're a cinematographer and you're looking for somebody to inspire, this film should show you that, should absolutely show you that. Oh, and there was a scene where Kole was headed down a hill. I think that's what they call heading into the unknown shot. It was a very, very nice scene. And this scene this shot where there was fire and you could see each speck of fire, like each crack. It was very amazing cinematography. It's a very aesthetically pleasing film to watch, by the way. Very clear. And so yeah, that's the most beautiful thing about this film, apart from the storytelling. Now, something that I'm still pondering about. There were 3 conflicts that were presented. The first conflict was the conflict between the Turkana people and their neighboring community, fighting for land because water in between has dried. It's either we come to your place, steal your cattle, graze our livestock on your side, or vice versa. Second was the conflict between nature and the Turkana people. Because, like I said, there was a constant reference talking about how nature was angry with these people. And then the last conflict, of course, was Kole. Because Kole, in the beginning, it was very clear that this is not the path that he wanted. He said it himself. He wanted a different path, but his brother told him that you have no choice. And I really wish we got to know exactly what Kole wanted to be. We just know what he did not want to be. He did not want to be a warrior. He didn't want to raid cattle. But he respected Akuj and nature, and he said that's what he feared the most, just that. So all these conflicts, we were able to follow this one. It goes off and we pause it at some point, follow another conflict, follow another one. It's a bit conflicting, but you can at the end you can see how they are all intertwined into Kole's story. Because again, this is a story of how, get this, climate change affects the life of an individual. Because Kole had to take care of livestock. Kole had to be there. Kole had to grow up. Kole had to be a man. Kole was expected to do several things in this community. And probably, was the climate any better, things would have been different. If there was rain and everything was well balanced out, I think things would have been different for Kole. And that's something really to think about. An interesting shot that I saw was where these people, the Turkana community, was raided by the neighboring community, and they stole their livestock and killed 2 people, which in this scene actually we got to see how actually I said actually 2 times. Can you tell I'm nervous? Kidding, I'm not nervous. It's how sensitive, or rather how well emotions from Patrick were portrayed. We have already seen how Patrick is such a strong character. You would not think that he would break that in order to show his emotions. We saw it when his, if you have not watched, I'm giving spoilers, his grandmother died. It was a very sad scene because you could tell they were both Kole and Patrick were attached to their grandmother. And also when the neighboring community came and attacked the Turkana people, or rather this community, and they lost 2 people who were sort of important to Patrick. They were important to Patrick. One was an elderly person, and the other one was a friend of Patrick. And Patrick kept saying that he will avenge. And from his speech, you can tell how badly hurt he was by this. And I think it was beautiful seeing that these people also they are hurt by things that happen around them. It's not just, they're not all macho and strong and have to be all that. They have feelings. They're going through things, And so in this scene, just after that fight, they do their ritual as usual. They call the shaman, and the shaman tells them that nature will not rest, or nature will not stop punishing them until they settle the score with their neighboring community, or rather with their attackers. So immediately after that scene, there are two birds seen fighting, vigorously fighting. So it gives like a preamble. Oh, there's going to be a fight. There's going to be a fight. And that left me with a bit of suspense, hoping, I hope Kole does not join his brother and go and fight. And I actually fear that Patrick would go and not return. Quite honestly, I actually did fear that that Patrick would go and be killed. But he comes back safely. And at the end now, seeing Kole transition from childhood to manhood, he had to make a sacrifice. So we see him, Kole takes his favorite sheep and he sacrifices it and uses it as a trap. There was a hyena is it hyena or hyena? Depends if you're English teacher. We'll argue about that later. We'll say hyena. Then you can pick which one you want. So Kole sacrifices his sheep. It was a very sad scene because you could tell how attached he was to his sheep. He cried, guys. He cried. And that scene was so raw. It was hard not to feel sorry for him. It was hard not to feel sad with him. You could see how affected he was. And he said, that was my sheep. And guys, I almost bawled my eyes out. Like, why did you have to kill it? Then kill the other ones. But I think it was also symbolic in that he was sacrificing what he wanted in order to take his place in the community, whether he liked it or not. So he puts the trap and he catches the hyena. So our dear Kole takes the hyena, drags it all the way back to the homestead, and we see a celebration. They have sort of like a dance with his brother and other male, or rather I think warriors of the community, and it's a very sweet scene for him. We can see how happy he is that he's finally accepted, or he's been finally accepted by the people in his community. And the ending scene, very, very funny. So in the beginning, I think it was like a juxtaposition of some sort. In the beginning, we saw Kole climbing the tree and shaking the leaves shaking the branches of the tree so that the leaves could fall and the sheep and goats could feed. Now, in the ending scene, we see Kole smoking a cigarette. So grown, smoking a cigarette and telling his nephew, climb up that tree, shake those branches until leaves fall, and then whistle and call the goats so that they can come and eat. It was a scene to tell us, now this is not the child that we saw at first. This is now a man in this community. So that was the film. And if you haven't watched it, let me give you a reason to. It's not every day that you get to understand a community this intimately. It's not every day that you get to understand how climate affects the life of an individual. Climate literally has shaped Kole's life. Like, as funny and as weird as it sounds, climate has shaped Kole's life. Every decision that he's made has been affected by climate. So it definitely gives us an opportunity or a chance to think about how different things could affect us in our lives. And I think it's a really, really beautiful film. I would rate it 7 out of 10. So thank you so much for listening to my podcast, for listening to this episode. You can find this film. You can just visit their page on Instagram, Between the Rains Film. And also follow me on my social media platforms on Instagram, on TikTok, and on X. Please listen, follow, share, hit the notification bell button. I never thought I'd say those words. Yeah, so that you're notified when we have a new episode. See you next week, guys. Bye. Hello, fellow cinephiles, and welcome back to yet another episode of Talk Film to Me. This is a podcast where we talk about films in Kenya and beyond. I'm your host, Nkatha. Let's talk film.